Have you ever wondered what happens when the woman who built the voice for an entire brand finally uses it for herself? I am that woman. They thought my voice belonged to the company, that I was just the brain behind the CEO. They forgot I was the one holding the pen, and I just found the letters. A company-wide meeting is about to become my stage. My name is Alara Vance. I am 38 years old, and I am the Chief Creative Officer of AuraSync Solutions, a branding consultancy that has been clawing its way to the top of the Denver tech scene. Our office is a monument to our own success, a gleaming, modern box of steel and glass on the 30th floor. Marcus, my husband, insisted on the open-plan design. He claimed it fostered transparency and collaboration. But standing here, by the floor-to-ceiling windows, I know the truth. It is a stage. It is a fishbowl where every movement is observed, every conversation half heard. A place where everything is exposed, or at least, that is the image we sell. I am supposed to be the soul of this company. That is the quiet word my designers use when they think I am not listening. I am the one who, 3 years ago, locked myself in a room for 72 hours and emerged with the human echo. That campaign was not just a branding strategy. It was a philosophy. It was the human emotional core we wrapped around cold technology, and it was the work that landed us our first Fortune 500 client. I am the voice that whispers the ideas. And then there is Marcus Thorne. He is 42. He is my husband. He is the CEO. Marcus is the face. He is the voice that booms. He is impossibly handsome, relentlessly charismatic, a master of the keynote speech, where I am the architect, drawing the blueprints in the dark. Marcus is the one who cuts the ribbon in the sunlight, his smile flashing for the cameras. He can sell a concept he only half understands and make a boardroom of skeptics believe it was their idea all along. It was not always this way. I remember the loft. I remember the smell of stale coffee and printing ink, the cramped space where the air conditioning barely worked. We started this from nothing. I sat on a second-hand office chair, writing copy that promised the world, while Marcus paced the warped floorboards, charming investors on a phone that was always threatening to die. We ate cheap takeout over spreadsheets, and we were invincible. We were the golden couple, building an empire from passion and sheer force of will. Now, the empire is built. But the dynamic has fractured. Marcus delivers the grand speeches about vision and synergy. I am the one working until 2 o'clock in the morning, the night before the presentation, rewriting his empty platitudes into something resembling genius. I make sure the data is sound, the narrative compelling, the vision his. I provide the substance. The people here reflect this split. My creative team respects me. They fear my red pen and they seek my approval. They know I am the brain, but the company, as a whole, adores Marcus. They are hypnotized by his confidence, his easy laugh, the way he remembers everyone's name. I am the engine, hidden away in the dark, and he is the polished, shining hood. For a long time, I told myself I was satisfied with this. I was the CCO, after all. His success was my success, our success. That was the bargain of the golden couple. That was the lie I told myself every morning as I put on my armor and stepped into the glass elevator. It was the lie that kept me quiet. It was the lie that kept me working. The change did not arrive like a storm. It arrived like a shift in barometric pressure, a subtle, creeping coldness that you feel in your bones before you understand why. The change had a name, Serafina Rowe. AuraSync hired her 3 months ago as our new head of strategic partnerships. She was, I guessed, around 30. She was not just dressed well, she was curated. Her designer clothes were sharp, architectural, and worn like armor. But her most effective weapon was her ability to mirror. I watched her in meetings. With the aggressive sales team, she became brisk and concise. With my languid, artistic designers, she softened her voice and leaned in. Conspiratorial. She was a chameleon, a dangerous social mimic, and she made me deeply uneasy. Marcus, however, was enchanted. In the first leadership meeting after she was hired, he introduced her with a glow I had not seen him direct at a colleague in years. "Serafina is going to be a game changer," he announced to the table. "She brings a fresh energy, a new perspective that I think we have desperately needed." His eyes met mine across the polished veneer of the table. I smiled and nodded, the dutiful CCO, the supportive wife. But I felt the first pinprick of alarm. It began almost immediately. The strategy sessions. Before Serafina, Marcus was home by 7, 8 at the latest. Suddenly, he was texting me at 9. Just wrapping up a deep dive with Serafina. The messages would read, "This new partnership angle is brilliant. Don't wait up." Then, she began to bleed into my territory. She started attending my creative brainstorming sessions, citing a need to align partnership strategies with the creative pipeline. She would sit in the back, observing, her pen making quiet, scratching sounds. She would offer suggestions that were perfectly, destructively vague. "Alara's concept is so solid," she would say, her voice smooth as silk. "I just wonder if we need something with a little more vibrancy." I watched that meaningless word spread through the leadership team like a virus. A week later, in a full company meeting, I heard Marcus use it. "Our new quarter needs to be about vibrancy." He said it as if it were his own revelation. I looked at Serafina, who was sitting in the front row, and she gave him a small, private smile of approval. The first real crack appeared on our anniversary. 10 years. We had reservations at the Kestrel, a place so difficult to get into I had to pull a favor 2 months in advance. I was dressed and waiting, the taxi idling downstairs, when my phone rang. "Alara, baby, I'm so sorry." Marcus's voice was rushed, laced with that practiced, executive-level regret. "This client crisis, it's exploding. I have to go to the Kestrel, of all places, to meet them. It's the only place they'd agree to." "A crisis at the Kestrel?" I asked, feeling the silk of my dress against my skin. "I know, it's insane. They're threatening to pull the account. I have to handle this. I will make it up to you, I promise. Happy anniversary." The line clicked dead. I stood in the silent apartment, the lie hanging in the air. It was a clumsy lie, but he was confident enough to tell it. I did not go out. I ordered pizza and opened a bottle of wine meant for celebration, drinking it alone in front of the television. The lie hardening into a cold knot in my stomach. Around 11, driven by a masochism I did not yet understand, I opened Instagram. I did not even follow Serafina, but a colleague of mine did, and her story was public. There it was, a single, elegant glass holding a bright pink cocktail, garnished with a single orchid. The background was unmistakable, the dark, polished bar and distinctive gold leaf wall pattern of the Kestrel. The caption was a single word: "Cheers." The Instagram post was a personal sting, but the professional blow was yet to come. I was in the final stages of the largest project of my career, the one I believed would define Aura Sync's next decade. I had named it Shape the Future. It was an audacious top-to-bottom repositioning of our entire brand philosophy, designed to move us from a consultancy to a true thought leader. It was my life's work for the past 6 months. I had lived in data, conducting hundreds of hours of market research. My office was a fortress of mood boards, covered in fabric swatches, psychological color studies, and printouts of our competitors' failures. I had written the manifestos myself, word by painstaking word, crafting a new narrative for a post-digital world. Shape the Future was not just a campaign, it was the intellectual and creative spine of the company, and it was mine. The day of the internal leadership pitch arrived. This was just a formality before the board presentation, a final check-in. I stood at the head of the conference table, the team I had built watching me with pride. I was on fire. I laid out the 6 months of research, the logic, the emotional core. I presented the new visual identity, the new voice, the new mission. I knew, even as I was speaking, that I was losing one member of the audience. Marcus was not looking at me. He was looking at his lap, his phone glowing under the dark wood of the table. He was texting. His distraction was so blatant it was a statement. When I finished, there was a beat of impressed silence from my team. Before anyone could speak, Serafina's voice cut through the air. "Ilara, that was incredibly thorough," she said. The compliment was a thin veil for the blade that followed. "I just have one flag: the budgetary feasibility of this rollout. It seems astronomical, given our current projections. I wonder if we should not pause this and reconsider our options." I was ready for this. "The budget is detailed on page 40 of the deck. Serafina," I said coolly. "It staggered over 3/4 and is fully covered by the capital we raised last." "Thank you, Ilara," Marcus suddenly interrupted, closing his laptop with a definitive snap. His voice was flat. "Very thorough, but Serafina has a point. The numbers feel soft." He had not even looked at the numbers. I stared at him. "Marcus, the numbers are projected based on the last 2 years of growth. Let's just shelve this for now," he said, standing up. "Good work, everyone, but we're on pause." He walked out of the room. Serafina gathered her papers, avoiding my eyes, and followed him. I was left standing in front of my life's work, my team's faces a mixture of confusion and pity. The campaign was not just paused, it was assassinated. The morale of my department evaporated overnight. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of suffocating silence and canceled meetings. Then, an email appeared in my inbox. "Mandatory leadership meeting urgent." We filed into the main boardroom. This time, it was not me at the podium. It was Serafina. She stood there, radiant in a sharp white suit, a smug, nervous energy coming off her. Marcus sat in the front row, looking at her like she was the future. "Thank you all for coming," Serafina began, her voice brimming with false confidence. "I know we've all been searching for the right next step for Aura Sync. After many late-night sessions and a lot of hard reevaluation, I'm prepared to present the campaign that will define our new direction. I call it Architecting Tomorrow." The first slide appeared on the giant screen. My blood turned to ice. It was my color palette. That specific shade of deep cerulean blue and brushed copper. It was my framework. The 5-pillar structure I had built from my research. It was my core language. Words like synthesis, resonance, and horizon, all lifted directly from my manifesto. It was my campaign. She had stolen it. She had taken Shape the Future and twisted it, keeping the skeleton, the heart, and the soul. She had changed about 30%. She swapped my elegant custom serif font for a cold, trendy sans serif. She had littered the text with her preferred buzzwords, like vibrancy and synergy, cheapening the entire concept. She had taken my masterpiece and put a gaudy plastic frame on it. She spoke for 20 minutes, presenting my research as her deep dive, my concepts as her innovations. When she finished, Marcus stood up and began to applaud. He did not just clap, he beamed. "This," he announced to the room, his voice booming with the passion I had once mistaken for integrity. "This is genius. This, Serafina, is exactly the breakthrough we needed." He looked around the room, daring anyone to disagree. "This is the future of AuraSync." I did not say a word. I sat perfectly still until the last person filed out of the boardroom, their congratulations to Serafina sounding obscene in the suddenly quiet room. I waited. I let the adrenaline cool into something hard and sharp. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was rage, pure and undiluted. I walked to Marcus's corner office. The door was open. He and Serafina were inside, standing close, a champagne flute in her hand. My presence made them jump apart. "Ilara," Marcus said, his voice tight with annoyance. I did not speak to him. I laid 2 stacks of paper on his glass desk. "Marcus," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "This is my original campaign manifesto for Shape the Future. It is time-stamped from 6 months ago." I tapped the first stack. And this, I tapped the second, is the presentation Serafina just gave? They are identical. I had highlighted the stolen passages, the core language, the 5-pillar structure. It was undeniable. Serafina looked at the papers, and for a split second, I saw raw panic in her eyes. Then, it vanished. Her face crumpled, her eyes filled with tears. A single, perfect tear rolled down her cheek. "I cannot believe this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Marcus, I feel so attacked. I worked so hard on this. She's trying to sabotage me." She looked at me, her expression one of profound hurt. "Is it because I'm younger? Alara, are you jealous?" I looked at Marcus, waiting. The proof was right in front of him. 6 months of my life, time-stamped, next to her plagiarized copy. He did not look at the papers. He did not look at the proof. He looked at Serafina's tears, and then he turned to me, his wife, and his face was cold with contempt. "Ilara, I am disappointed in you," he said. His voice was low, cutting. "You are being incredibly unprofessional. We are a team. This kind of petty, jealous behavior is beneath this office." He straightened his tie. "Frankly, maybe you're not cut out for this level of leadership anymore." The next morning, an email was sent to my entire department. Mandatory creative all hands, 10 a.m., glass conference room. The glass conference room, not our usual space. This was the fishbowl, the room with transparent walls facing the main atrium. It was a room you used for a public execution. My team, all 50 of them, filed in. They were nervous, sensing the tension. I sat in the front row, my spine straight. Marcus walked in, followed by Serafina. He did not look at me. He went straight to the front. "Good morning, everyone," he started, his voice full of false corporate cheer. "As you know, we are moving forward with the Architecting Tomorrow campaign, which Serafina has so brilliantly developed." He paused, and the air in the room became thin. "To that end, we're implementing a slight restructuring to maximize efficiency. Effective immediately, Serafina will be temporarily overseeing all major creative projects, including the Architecting Tomorrow rollout, to ensure it has the leadership it deserves." I was publicly demoted. He had done it. In front of my entire team, the people I had hired, mentored, and led for a decade. I was still CCO, a meaningless title, but I was now functionally reporting to the woman who had stolen my work. Marcus looked directly at me for the first time, his expression unreadable. "Alara will be supporting Serafina to ensure a smooth transition." A wave of profound, suffocating silence filled the room. No one typed, no one moved. I could feel 50 pairs of eyes burning into my skin. They were horrified, embarrassed, and afraid to look at me, yet unable to look away. This was the ultimate humiliation. I held my husband's gaze. I let him see the absolute stillness in my face. I did not cry. I did not flinch. I kept my features perfectly, terrifyingly blank. After a beat that stretched for an eternity, I gave him one sharp, clean nod. "Clear," I said. I became the model of professional submission. The humiliation in the glass conference room was a pivot. The rage did not disappear. It simply cooled, solidifying into something heavy, methodical, and patient. I accepted my new role with an obedience that seemed to unnerve my team and, paradoxically, relieve my husband. I attended every meeting Serafina scheduled for Architecting Tomorrow. I sat at the table, a black pen in my hand, a yellow legal pad in front of me. I listened intently as Serafina, in her sharp designer blazers, presented my own strategies back to me. She used my words, my data, my core philosophies, and delivered them with the shaky confidence of a thief who thinks they have gotten away with it. "Ilara, do you have any thoughts on the Q3 rollout?" she would ask, a thin veneer of collaboration over her triumph. "Just one minor note. I would reply, my voice even. On slide 12, the logo placement feels a bit crowded. Perhaps we shift it 5% to the left. I offered small, meaningless adjustments. I corrected her grammar. I suggested font pairings. I was helpful, polite, and utterly empty. After every meeting, I sent a prompt, detailed email summarizing the action items, always copying Marcus. Per our conversation, Serafina, these are the agreed-upon next steps. My team, the designers and writers I had mentored, watched me with a mixture of pity and confusion. They were waiting for me to break, to scream, to fight. They did not understand that this calm, this meticulous note-taking was the real fight. Marcus was visibly relieved. The crisis had been averted. His hysterical, emotional wife had finally seen reason. He caught me by the coffee machine one afternoon, placing a patronizing hand on my shoulder. "I'm glad you're seeing the bigger picture, Ilara," he said, his voice low and soothing. "I knew you'd come around. This is what's best for the company." "Of course, Marcus," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Whatever is best for the company." I went home that night and moved my things into the guest room. When he found me making the bed, his face was a mask of confusion. "What's this, I need space?" I said, not looking up from the pillowcase. "This transition, it's demanding. I need to focus on the work. I'll be starting early, and I don't want to wake you." It was an excuse he could not argue with. He was getting the compliant employee at the office and a quiet, separate house. He accepted it, probably grateful to be rid of the pretense. My new routine began. The alarm on my phone vibrated silently at 4:30 a.m. I was in the office by 5, walking through the dark, silent expanse of the 30th floor. The building was empty save for the hum of the servers. I was gone by the time the last cleaning crew member finished their rounds, often well after midnight. But I was not supporting Serafina. I was not working on architecting tomorrow. I was the chief creative officer. I was still, on paper, one of the 3 most powerful people in this company. I still had the admin passwords. I still had the executive-level access to every file, every log, every piece of data that moved through AuraSync. In their arrogance, in their haste to humiliate me, Marcus and Serafina had forgotten what I actually did. I was not doing my job. I was conducting a forensic audit. I pulled the server logs, tracing IP addresses and login times. I reviewed the company expense reports, cross-referencing dates and locations. I examined the access logs for the executive email archive. I was not looking for proof of the affair, the anniversary, the late-night strategy sessions, the shared glances I knew. That was a simple, boring, human failure. I did not care about the betrayal of my heart. I cared about the betrayal of my life's work. I was not looking for love letters. I was looking for the tangible, documented proof of their conspiracy. I was looking for their stupidity. And I knew, with the certainty of a woman who had built an empire on data, that they would have been stupid. Hubris always leaves a paper trail. For 2 weeks, my life was a blur of spreadsheets and server logs. I found the expense reports for their client crisis dinner at the Kestrel. I found the late-night logins from Marcus's home IP address to Serafina's private project folder. I had a mountain of circumstantial data, but I lacked the keystone. I was missing the single, undeniable document that proved their collusion beyond any doubt. I found it on a Tuesday, at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was not even looking at email. I was running a routine audit of our hardware usage, a dull task I usually delegated, when I noticed an anomaly. The high-end color printer on the executive floor, the Kio 95, a machine that cost more than a car and was reserved exclusively for board-level presentations, was seeing an incredible amount of activity. It was running print jobs almost every night, between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. That was sloppy. That was arrogant. That was the mistake I had been waiting for. My executive credentials gave me full access to the printer's server. I opened the job log. The timestamps were all late night. The originating workstation ID was always the same SRO T1, Serafina's computer. My first thought was that she was stealing company data, printing out client lists or financial reports. But the file sizes were small, and the number of pages was inconsistent. One job was 2 pages. The next was 1. The next was 3. I navigated to the server's cache. Most people do not know that a network printer's hard drive stores a temporary image of every single job it processes. It is a security flaw, really, but it is perfect for an audit. The files were not PDFs or spreadsheets. They were JPEGs and Word documents with titles like For Later Docs and Scan 01 on JPG. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I clicked on the first file. Scan 01 JPG. It was a scanned handwritten note on cheap lined paper. It was not her handwriting. It was Marcus's. And it was not just any note. It was on official AuraSync letterhead, the embossed logo at the top dark with ink. My dearest S, it began. I am watching you across the boardroom and I am undone. I cannot spend another minute of my life tied to the burden of a dead marriage. You are not just a breath of fresh air. You are the storm I have been waiting for. She is a boat anchor, and you are my liberation. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was so much worse than I imagined. The cheap poetry, the corporate letterhead, it was a new, breathtaking level of tacky and treacherous. I closed the file, my hand shaking. I opened the next one. For later, docs. This one was from her. It was a Word document, typed in an obnoxious, flowing script font, as if she were a teenager. It was long. 2 full pages, and it was not a love letter. It was a business plan. My Marcus, it started. I cannot wait for the all-hands meeting. It will be the start of everything for us. After you announce my new CCO position, we can finally begin the process of pushing Alara out. My breath hitched. I read the line again. We can finally begin the process of pushing Alara out. She will not fight. She will be too humiliated. She will quit from the shame, and the board will have to approve my appointment. It will be a clean break. I scrolled down. My own name jumped out at me from the page. I cannot believe how easy it was. I reused her crusty old Shape the Future campaign, and everyone, even the board, bought it as my idea. It was so simple. She really thought those ideas were original. She is so painfully naive, stuck in her old ways. She built the boat, my love. But we are the ones who get to sail it. Just hold on a little longer. I sat back in my chair. The office was pitch black around me, the only light coming from the glowing screen. Naive. Crusty. She will quit from the shame. I methodically opened every single file in the cache. There were 12 pages in total, 12 pages of their affair, their conspiracy, and their contempt. I downloaded every single one. The quarterly all-hands meeting was scheduled for that Friday. It was always the biggest event of the quarter, a mandatory gathering for all 200 employees at our Denver headquarters. It was Marcus's stage. He would deliver his State of the Company address, full of charisma and strategically vague projections, but I knew what this one was for. I had read the script. After you announce my new CCO position. This was my execution. This was the moment they planned to humiliate me into quitting. I had 48 hours. I did not sleep. On Wednesday night, well after midnight, I walked to the executive floor. I approached the Kio 95, the machine they had been so careless with. I loaded the main tray, not with standard copy paper, but with my private stock. The 90-pound matte finish, cream-colored presentation stock I reserved for our most important clients. It was thick, heavy, and expensive. It felt like parchment. I accessed the files I had saved and began to print. I made 8 complete sets, 1 for me and 7 for the front row. The printer hummed, slowly producing the 12 pages of their conspiracy in stunning, high-definition color. The AuraSync letterhead on Marcus's note looked sickeningly official. Serafina's flowery script font looked even more juvenile on paper. On Thursday night, I sat on the floor of the guest room, the 8 identical stacks fanned out around me. I took a bright red chisel-tip highlighter. I did not just mark the passages about their affair, I barely marked them at all. That was just the seasoning, the emotional leverage. I highlighted the lines that constituted corporate espionage. I reused her crusty old Shape the Future campaign. Everyone, even the board, bought it as my idea. I highlighted the lines that detailed their conspiracy to defraud the company. After you announce my new CCO position, we can finally begin the process of pushing Alara out. She will quit from the shame, and the board will have to approve my appointment. I highlighted the lines that showed their utter contempt for the people they led. She is so painfully naive, stuck in her old ways. She is a boat anchor, and you are my liberation. I highlighted the date on my original time-stamped manifesto, and then the date on Serafina's presentation, and placed that comparison sheet right on top. When I was finished, the documents were no longer love letters. They were indictments. They were evidence of intellectual property theft, corporate malfeasance, and a conspiracy to oust a sitting C-suite executive. I slid each 12-page set into a thick, cream-colored envelope. I wrote a name on the front of each in my sharpest calligraphy. Mr. Davies, Ms. Albright, Mr. Al-Jamil, the 7 most powerful investors and board members who governed our company. I sealed each one. Friday morning, I woke before my 4:30 alarm. I showered and stood in my walk-in closet, bypassing the sea of safe, corporate navy blues and grays. I chose the suit I had been saving. A custom-tailored, single-breasted suit in a deep, jarring crimson. It was the color of a warning sign, the color of blood. I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. The main conference hall was empty, silent. The 7 seats in the very center of the front row were already designated with polished brass nameplates. I walked down the aisle, my heels clicking in the silence. One by one, I placed the heavy sealed envelopes precisely in the center of each designated seat. They looked official. They looked like part of the presentation. I then walked to the 3rd row, slightly off-center, a strange place for the CCO to sit, not in the front row with the leadership, not in the back with the newcomers. I sat down in the empty auditorium, the 7 envelopes gleaming in the dim morning light, and I waited for the company to arrive. By 9:55 a.m., the main conference hall was a sea of bodies and noise. It was beyond capacity. Over 200 employees, our entire Denver staff, packed into the rows, with latecomers lining the back wall. The air was thick with anticipation, that familiar, almost frantic buzz that always preceded one of Marcus's State of the Company addresses. They were expecting a big announcement, something to justify the company-wide halt. They were hungry. I remained in my seat, 3rd row, on the aisle, a strange, solitary island. My presence there, not in the front row, not in the back, but just there, was a public statement. I could feel the whispers. I saw my own creative team members look at me, then quickly look away, finding seats as far from me as possible. They were embarrassed for me. I sat alone, my spine straight, my hands resting in my lap. In the front row, Serafina was in her element. She was already seated when the board members and investors arrived, and she stood to greet them, shaking their hands, laughing her light, practiced laugh. She was wearing a sharp, offensively white suit, as if to signal her own purity. She took her seat next to Jonathan Davies, our primary investor, looking as comfortable as if the chair had been reserved for her, as if she already belonged. At 10 o'clock on the dot, the house lights dimmed, the pre-show music swelled, then faded. A single, dramatic spotlight hit the center of the stage. Marcus walked into it. The applause was, as always, deafening. He was a rock star in a $5,000 suit. He was handsome, he was powerful, and he was smiling, soaking in their adoration. He looked out at the sea of faces, his adoring employees, his colleagues, his investors. He did not look at me. "Good morning. Aura Sync." His voice boomed through the speakers, rich and confident. What a quarter. What a year. I look out at this room, and I see the most innovative, the most dedicated, the most brilliant minds in the industry. He began his performance. He paced the stage, using the open palm gestures I had told him built trust. He spoke of vision. He spoke of synergy. He praised the sales team for their aggressive outreach and the tech team for their scalable solutions. And then he turned to the future. "But we cannot rest on our laurels," he declared. "The future is not just something we wait for. It is something we build. And to build that future, we are entering a brave new era of leadership." I was not watching him. I was watching the front row. The 7 board members and investors had settled in. They had their notepads, their glasses of water, and my thick, cream-colored envelopes. Mr. Davies, the most powerful man in the room besides Marcus, was the first. He picked up the envelope, his brow furrowing. He assumed it was the agenda, perhaps a printed financial summary. I watched his manicured fingers break the wax-colored seal. He slid the stack of 12 pages out. He was still half listening to Marcus, who was now saying, "A new era requires new energy, new ideas." Davies glanced at the top sheet, the cover page, the side-by-side comparison of my Shape the Future manifesto, time-stamped 6 months ago, and Serafina's Architecting Tomorrow deck, dated 2 weeks ago. He stopped half listening. He looked down, really reading it. Marcus said, "A bold vision, unbound by the past." Davies flipped to the second page. Marcus's handwritten, romantic drivel on official Aura Sync letterhead. His eyes scanned the text. He adjusted his glasses. His face, previously bored, became sharp with focus. 2 seats down, Ms. Albright, a venture capitalist known for her ruthlessness, had opened hers. She was not reading, she was scanning, absorbing the information with terrifying speed. She read the line about pushing Alara out. I saw her knuckles turn white as she gripped the papers. Her head snapped up, and she looked past Davies, at Serafina. Serafina was still beaming at the stage, lost in the performance, unaware. Now Al-Jamil, another key investor, was reading. He was on the page detailing the crusty old campaign and how naive I was. His face, normally jovial, turned to stone. He looked at Davies. Davies met his gaze. An invisible, terrible understanding passed between them. In the span of 90 seconds, while my husband was praising transparency and integrity, the entire financial and legal governance of AuraSync had stopped watching the show. They were reading the evidence. Marcus, oblivious, was building to his finale. A leadership structure that is agile, responsive, and perfectly aligned. Serafina finally sensed the shift. The atmosphere in the front row had turned arctic. She saw Davies looking at her, not with admiration, but with a cold, analytical curiosity. She saw Albright holding the papers. She looked down the row and saw 7 identical open envelopes. Her smile faltered. The color drained from her face. On stage, Marcus was beaming, ready to deliver the final killing blow. Marcus paused, his smile at its absolute brightest. He was glowing. He was just about to receive their adulation for the masterstroke he was about to announce. He raised his hands, as if to conduct the energy in the room. "And speaking," he boomed, his voice full of manufactured passion, "of the future of creativity at AuraSync. This was the moment. This was the line." I stood up. My crimson suit was aflare in the dim auditorium. The simple act of rising from my seat, a single woman in the third row, had the force of a gunshot. Every single sound in the room stopped. The coughing, the shuffling of papers, the whispered side conversations, all of it ceased. 200 employees, plus the board, turned their heads as one. 200 pairs of eyes, A heavy, physical weight landed on me. I did not run. I did not shout. I did not stumble. I placed my left foot in the center aisle and then my right. I began to walk, my steps measured, my heels making a slow, deliberate click. Click, click on the polished concrete floor. It was the only sound in the entire hall. On stage, Marcus had frozen. His smile was still plastered on his face, but it had become a rictus, a mask of confusion. The spotlight was on him, but the focus of the entire company was on me. "Ilara," he said into the microphone. His voice, which had just been booming with confidence, was now small, uncertain. It was a question, not a command. "Ilara, what are you doing?" I did not answer him. I did not look at him. I looked straight ahead, my gaze fixed on the small set of stairs at the side of the stage. I reached the front row. I could feel the heat radiating from Serafina as I passed. I could smell her expensive, cloying perfume. I placed my hand on the railing and ascended the 3 low steps. I was on the stage. Now, I was in the spotlight with him. We were the golden couple again, just as we were in the beginning, sharing the light. But this time, I was not standing behind him. I walked directly to the podium, to the microphone he had just been using. He was standing a few feet away, utterly stunned, his hand still awkwardly raised. I held my own stack of papers, the cream-colored, red-highlighted set I had prepared for myself. "Ilara, this is not the time," he hissed, trying to reclaim control, but there was panic in his voice now. I ignored him. I reached for the microphone, my hand steady. It was set for his height. I calmly adjusted the gooseneck, pulling it down toward me. The slight squeak of the metal joint echoed through the silent room. I looked at the front row. Serafina was no longer looking at Marcus. She was staring at the stack of papers in my hand. She recognized the cream stock. She recognized the red highlighting. Her face, which had been pale, was now a dead, chalky white. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked like she was going to be sick. I turned my gaze from her and looked out at the vast, silent, terrified audience. I looked at my team. I looked at the board members, who were all sitting forward in their seats, their copies of the letters already in their hands. I tapped the microphone once. The thump was deafening. "Hello, everyone," I said. My voice was clear. It was calm. It was the voice I used to close Fortune 500 clients, the voice I used to build the human echo. It was the voice of the company. I paused, letting them listen. Marcus was just speaking about the future of creative leadership. I continued, my voice resonating, amplified, filling every corner of the room. And I happen to have some of the primary source material for that new strategy right here. I lifted the first heavy, cream-colored page. The red highlighter marks were like fresh wounds. I angled the paper toward the light and began to read. My voice, the voice that had sold millions of dollars in branding, was perfectly steady. "This is from Serafina," I announced. "My Marcus. I simply cannot wait for the all-hands meeting. It will be the start of everything for us. After you announce my new CCO position..." A sound rippled through the auditorium. It was a massive, collective gasp, a single intake of breath from 200 people at once. It was the sound of a vacuum being created. I did not pause. I let my voice rise, overriding the murmur. "We can finally begin the process of pushing Ilara out." I let those words hang in the air for a single, brutal second. "She will not fight," I continued, projecting to the back wall. "She will be too humiliated. She will quit from the shame, and the board will have to approve my appointment." That was when Marcus moved. He broke from his paralysis, his face a mask of purple rage, and he lunged, not at me, but at the microphone. He tried to grab it. I turned my body, shielding the podium, and raised my voice, a sharp, commanding tone that none of them had ever heard from me. "And this part," I shouted, my voice cracking with power, "is about the Architecting Tomorrow campaign." He froze, his hand an inch from the mic. He was stunned by my volume. I found the highlighted line and read it with venomous precision. I cannot believe how easy it was. I reused her crusty old Shape the Future campaign, and everyone, even the board, bought it as my idea. It was so simple. I looked up from the page, finding the eyes of my creative team in the crowd. She really thought those ideas were original. She is so painfully naive, stuck in her old ways. I let the professional assassination land. Then, I slowly, deliberately, flipped the page. "And this one," I said, my voice dropping back to a cold, clear monotone, "is from our CEO, written on official AuraSync letterhead." I read his words. "Serafina, my love, I am undone. You are not just a breath of fresh air. You are my liberation from the burden of a dead marriage." I saw Marcus flinch, as if I had struck him. In the front row, I heard a sharp sound. Jonathan Davies, our primary investor, had just slammed his open palm on the armrest of his chair. He was on his feet, his face a furious mottled red. "Thorne," he roared. I did not stop. I read the next line. "As soon as we secure the board, we can begin our life." I looked up from the paper. I found my husband's eyes. He was standing, trapped, a statue of a man in the harsh glare of the spotlight. I read the final, highlighted sentence directly to him, my voice full of all the glass and steel in that building. "You are not just my future. You are the future of AuraSync. Ilara is just the past." I finished. I placed the stack of 12 papers neatly on the podium, aligning their edges. I stepped back and looked at the carnage. The room was in chaos. People were standing, yelling. My team was staring, their faces a mixture of horror and a terrible, dawning respect. In the front row, Ms. Albright was on her phone, presumably calling our legal counsel. Mr. Davies was shouting something at Marcus that I could not hear over the din, and Serafina, she was gone. I watched the emergency exit door at the side of the hall swing slowly shut. She had not just walked out, she had fled. I looked at Marcus. He was completely broken. His mouth was open, his skin gray. The rock star had left the building. I leaned forward, one last time, to the microphone that had been my weapon. I spoke into the chaos, and my voice cut through it all. "So that's the state of the company," I said. "Any questions? Thank you all for listening to my story. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can chat and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story."